Welcome to Metabolic Matters podcast, where we embark on conversations with thought leaders, disruptors, change agents, and passionate souls. Together, we'll delve into what truly matters to them. And you'll learn how to metabolize this newfound wisdom so you can transform your own metabolic health. Now let's meet today's guest. On this inaugural Metabolic Matters podcast, it is an honor and a privilege to commune with someone who seems to find words and take action that resonates deeply with me and the mission and vision of the Metabolic Terrain Institute of Health. Please join me as we step into the world of Dr. Zach Bush, a visionary who dances on the edges of convention, challenging the boundaries of science, health, and human potential. Beyond the familiar narratives that circulate, Dr. Bush emerges as a modern alchemist, weaving threads of microbiology, ecological consciousness, and metaphysical curiosity into an intricate tapestry of enlightenment. Rather than simply regurgitating the commonplace, let us embark on a journey to unearth the layers beneath the surface. Dr. Zach Bush is not merely a physician, he is an explorer of the human ecosystem, investigating the symbiotic relationships that connect us not just to each other, but to the very soil from which our very existence springs. His perspective stretches far beyond the confines of a lab coat. It reaches into the heart of our interconnectedness with the earth itself. Beyond his many achievements, his unyielding quest for truth sets him apart. Dr. Bush is not content with accepting the status quo. Instead, he peels back the layers of dogma to reveal a deeper understanding of the intricate dance between health, environment, and consciousness. His wisdom unfurls like petals of a flower, each one holding a unique fragrance of wisdom, revealing novel ways to harmonize our bodies, our minds, and our souls in and within the world around us. So let us explore the unconventional. Let us delve into the essence of Dr. Zach Bush, an iconoclast, a healer, and a philosopher of the earth. His story is not one-dimensional. It's a mosaic of revelations that challenge, provoke, and inspire. Prepare to be captivated, for Dr. Bush beckons us to step off the beaten path and embrace a new narrative, one that transcends the ordinary and ushers us into the realm of limitless possibilities. This episode is brought to you by Chemothermia Oncology Center. In the complex world of cancer treatment, it is crucial to choose a center that doesn't just aim to attack the tumor, but one that supports the patient integratively. At Chemothermia, the commitment is clear. Expand the paradigms of cancer treatments with the ultimate goal of creating a comprehensive treatment model, a model which supports you while not just focusing on the tumor. Chemothermia understands the fundamental role of cellular metabolism in health, an overlooked area that is attracting increasing attention across the medical spectrum. By focusing on cellular metabolism, they work to balance and support this crucial system against both the debilitations of cancer and its treatment, increasing the patient's resilience to both. Because every individual's metabolism is unique, Chemothermia believes in a personalized, integrative, and a metabolic approach to cancer treatment. Their commitment is to offer treatments tailored for each patient, ensuring the highest chance of success. Chemothermia Center, where the cancer journey is personalized, where you are supported, and where hope thrives. Learn more at chemothermia.com. That's chemothermia.com. Wow. I'm just going to take a deep, grateful breath to be here with you, Dr. Zach. This is incredible. From the moment I heard you, you literally inspired, mesmerized me, and have done so for years. The first time I ever got to hear you really in person speak, even though I'd heard you online and knew a bit about you, and of course about at that time, I don't even remember the name of your company in the beginning. We'll go back to that in a little bit, but I know it is Ion Biome now. But just to hear you at the Acres Conference, this gathering of these beautiful farmers and ranchers from all over the country, some even from all over the world,
there to listen to you as the keynote speaker. It was such a beautiful discussion. I mean, you brought the entire audience, myself, to tears, and I was honestly too shy to come up and speak to you after. And I think I literally tear up, if not even ugly girl cry, every time I hear you speak or present, because you just touch a chord in myself and so many. And so it was a joy to be with you again in person this summer, again to watch a group of huge. There was over 2,000 people at this conference. It's integrative personalized medicine conference in London, and you took us all home. You were the closing keynote lecturer, and again, not a dry eye in the home, brought everyone to their feet, opened up so many powerful conversations that my husband, and my sister-in-law got to continue with you very personally and intimately into one of the most amazing evenings that I will forever remember. And so with that, I just feel like you have such a gift of your words, of your wisdom, and of your presence. And I'm really grateful to have you here with all of us today.
Nasha, I'm just so pleased to be on with you and thrilled to be part of your project in any small way. It's been an extraordinary journey just in being witness to it in these last couple of years as you've gotten this thing into fruition. It's an inspiration to all of us. It's what we all knew in our hearts was possible for the future of healthcare, and it's been just a fascinating journey over the last 15 years for me to kind of come out of that deep Western medicine allopathic mindset of chemotherapy development to this point where I couldn't be more excited about a hospital built in a farm field and what that means for our future. So the gifts that you bring, your willingness to vision what others have thought about often but just believed impossible. You've taken us past the impossible into the possible future that we all would want for ourselves and our loved ones. Who wouldn't want a biodynamic place of healing to be around you when you're in your health crisis moment? And so this is just an honor to be with you and everybody joining this audience. I just honor each of you because the body of wisdom that will be exchanged in this conversation is representative of everything that you all hold. And every time I speak, I'm always a bit in awe of what comes through, because the gift that we really hold as speakers or whatever place we were put in the world as stewards is to become a voice piece for the whole. And I really feel that for each of you are part of Nasha's creativity and dream work and dream manifestation, and you're part of my capacity for doing what I do, but also part of the thing that makes me continue. It's when I'm low and I'm drawn out. It's an audience like this that gets me up in the morning, gets me put one foot in front of the other again, because you all are inspirational as a community, as a global community. So grateful, Nasha, for bringing us all together. Thank you. And your whole team behind the podcast. I honor everybody who puts their time and wisdom and efforts into creating something like this. Media is a difficult place to play. Anything that involves a plug and a screen is prone to disaster. And so honor every team that's capable of bringing one of these to fruition. So thank you for having me on as the short version.
Oh my gosh, so beautiful. It's so interesting because I feel like I know so much about you. As I said, I've sort of been cyber stalking you for many moons now, in a good way, a friendly stalker.
Deeply appreciated.
And turning many other people on. It's just really beautiful to say your name and people light up out there in the world. But one of the cool things I learned about you in your CV was you received, I don't know, somewhere in the early 2000s, I believe, after your medical career, you received some type of a really interesting award, the Paradigm Shifter Award. Okay, and first, I would imagine that actually you would have a wall of these displayed. So please tell me what that was all about.
That was from the what do they call themselves? Association of Integrative Medicine. Screwing up their acronym there, but the Association of Integrative Medicine globally there was run by the president, Lee Cowden, who's one of my heroes in life. And that whole group was where I started to debut the science that my laboratory was bringing out in 2012 and 13. And this was a group of doctors, 4,000 doctors globally that had long been trumpeting the need for an alternative viewpoint on health. And had, created a lot of the common terminology that we've all become, aware of, if not indoctrinated to, around, chronic Lyme disease and gluten sensitivity and leaky gut, and words that have become now commonplace, which at the time were considered, quackery and crazy talk. And to the credit of all these doctors, it had been done entirely observationally. In those 4,000 doctors, there was, really a paucity of basic science laboratories and everything else to prove out the clinical findings and conclusions they were coming to through the best laboratory in the world, which is human intuition. And so they were utilizing their intuition to ferret out these new truths in the chronic disease era. And when my lab came along and I came along as a spokesperson for the 150 collective years of scientific expertise in my laboratory and got to share this with them, it was like setting off a nuclear bomb of joy, because it was just like, minds were blowing because they knew it. They knew it so deep in their gut, and to see this gut health story really put in front of them through extraordinary data, but also images. In our laboratory, we're able to actually take images at the microscopic level of the way in which gut cells interact to create an intelligent barrier between the outside world, the microbiome, and our immune system. And to get to see that, I think, was just a deep affirmation of their wisdom, their intuition, but also their trust in themselves as humans, and be told by the vast majority of the medical community that you're crazy for decades and really ostracized for those different thoughts. It's just such a vindication, I think, that came along in 2013. And so when we came on the scene, and at the same time, I was really frightened for the industry because we had so much pseudoscience going on. There was a lot of really bold claims being made and very little scientific backing to a lot of these claims and thought processes. So for all the accuracy of the intuition, there had also been a lot of deep rabbit holes that had been fallen down because we were ultimately preaching to the choir, right? And you get into that little echo chamber of thinking, you often lose the forest for the trees. And so I think my lab had the ability to show them the reality of the microscopic, and then whatever I bring to it was starting to show systems thinking around how that microscopic story related to the whole, and how this related to ultimately the food industry and some of those big macro systems that we again thought had something to do with the chronic disease epidemic, but we were able to show causation, not just correlation between processed food and chronic disease. So that's kind of where things started. And so for that, I still don't even know if they created that award just to give me, or if that's actually a real award. But so it was given in the context of all of that, and it was I'm honored to receive that, obviously, for my team. But ultimately, it's interesting, for me, that was hopefully the last award I ever need to receive in life, because there again is an issue around, and this is maybe one of my flaws, not my strengths, but I start to get a little bit claustrophobic or start hyperventilating when I feel like there's that pat each other on the back kind of thing of like, you're so smart, or you're doing such a good job, because that's my post-traumatic stress from being in academia for 17 years. I was in academic medicine, and the amount of nepotism that happens in the academic environment, and you don't even realize how closed-minded you are because you've been told you're at like the forefront of innovation and thinking, and you have no idea as a well-meaning doctor that you've become a cog in a machine that's got you so tightly bound in a box that you can't even see the world. And this is how the world's population is experiencing the user version of the medical system, which is you go into the doctor, you have a complaint, you could be complaining of stomach problems or gut problems, or your bowel movements are screwed up, and the doctor's going to tell you it has nothing to do with your food. And as just an intuitive being, you're just like, that can't be. And this person seems intelligent and they seem very educated. How is it possible that they don't think what I'm eating is And the answer is because they grew up in a system where the blinders were on, the layers of denial were so deep that your capacity for creative thinking or systems thinking had been slowly ground down to near zero. And for that, you become a technician of the pharmaceutical industry, and you become a technician of diagnostic testing rather than actually listening and becoming an intuitive partner to the patient in a journey which is intrinsically magical, because that is a freaking 70 trillion cell organism that came out of one cell in the self-organized in the womb of their mother, and then animated by some ancient soul, and came leaping forth with a character and personality that could not be defined within the genomics, and the spiritual being is now present. And the moment they take their first breath, both parents are in just awe because something came through that's entirely a miracle, and no scientific experiment has ever figured out how it's possible that living life form occurred, let alone maintains life. And then gets to the end of that biologic system and lets go of a body to expand yet again into a cosmic journey, and then sometimes come back and forth between the body and that cosmic journey to tell us what it looks like on the other side of the veil in the hospice journey. And yet then we're dumbed down to this situation of just, blood pressure or blood sugar, and we have these incredibly reductionist views of what it means to be a doctor, and for that you miss the part that's called human.
Wow. I mean, there's so many pieces here, but I think what is so beautiful is you literally just wove us the sort of chronology or biography of your life to arrive in this moment of these experiences personally, professionally, with other colleagues, et cetera, which I think is really amazing. And I would like the listeners to have an understanding, because many of them hear this side of you now. A lot of how you just shared is how you show up in the world for all of us today. But a lot of people may not realize you were that very long, logistic and very linear thinking person at one time. I mean, my gosh, your training was in endocrinology and metabolism. So I am so curious as to where your personal paradigm shift happened of what you were trained in medical school. You alluded to this, like the numbers, the blood pressure, the hip to waist ratio, of what you learned about metabolic health or metabolic disease back in medical school to how you understand it today. Can you walk us through a little bit of where that click happened for you?
Yeah, I mean, you don't even realize you're the frog in boiling water there at all in medical school, because right out of the box, you start getting trained in disease. You start with gross anatomy and a physiology course that tells you about how organs work. But it's not even copped at that point in the term health or longevity or anything like that. And so it's, here's a liver, here's a kidney, here's a heart, here's what it does. And you try to piece that together into a multifaceted machine. And then from that moment, as soon as you've got a sense of the machine, they start showing you disease. And so by second semester of medical school, in what will be really a minimum 10-year journey kind of thing, you are now really indoctrinated, and all you know is the course of disease or decline of cells. And you're given then a treatment mentality and modality system or toolbox that is simply there to palliate the disease. And at no point are you asked, well, how does health happen, or what the hell is even health? Like, at no point was health defined for me as a doctor. Wow. And so really what we subconsciously develop is a belief that there's basically disease and it's inevitable, and the only path is death. And so your job is to step in and try to slightly change the trajectory of disease towards death. And at no point are you asked to take any responsibility or give your patient any responsibility towards what would be the opposite of disease, which might be something like health. So it's just that nature of education rather than learning. Education is a system of programming. Learning is a system of experience. We are not ever given the opportunity for experiential learning. We are immediately put into a didactic programming that is built by a chemical pharmaceutical industry that has perfected itself over about 100-year period to reduce the human condition to a series of metrics that can be measured. And you mentioned metabolism as a concept. Metabolism was my second specialty. First was internal medicine, which is kind of your general adult hospital care, all that stuff. And so I ran ICUs and bone marrow transplant units, and I was all over the hospital all the time. I was working 100 hours a week and having a ball. I loved it. I honestly loved every second of it. I found the learning amazing. For all the education, my learning on the wards of a hospital just dwarfed everything. And I got to see biology at such a state of extremity that I could, you can take those seemingly, useless metrics of blood pressure and you can change them with these powerful drugs from second to second. So I could see an ICU patient admitted to my ward, who's crashing, liver failure, kidney failure, lung failure. They're on a ventilator. They're on every blood pressure, support system possible to keep their heart pumping. And you have them on a completely non-human mechanized version of life. And over a few days, they would stabilize oftentimes. Well, infrequently, but even if it's 30%, you still feel like a god because you tend to forget the 60, 70% that are dying so quickly. But you feel like you're really doing something. And so for a period of time, which can last a few years as a doctor, you start to believe that you really have been given that godlike toolbox you've been handed. And it takes some time before you realize, wow, that patient that I, cured or helped recover from the ICU is back 6 weeks later. And wow, they're in twice as long this time than they were last time. And then I finally get them out and they're back 4 weeks later. And you start to realize that hospitals are a turnstile for, a recidivism rate worse than our prison system. Once you're in the hospital system, you are in the hospital system. And this is terrifying as a patient because you can feel it happening. You can feel this slippery slope, and every time you engage, it's harder to climb back out of the hole that you're falling into. You're weaker, you have more depression, you have poor sleep, or your sleep is worse, your depression is worse, sex drive is gone, your sense of purpose and vitality is gone. And so where I was in medical school, I guess, after all that, because this was your question, is I thought metabolism was a blood sugar. Now, 25 years later, I believe that metabolism is the measure of energy that is transmitted from an ancient soul into a biologic finite expression of itself. And metabolism at that level, metabolism is a word that's supposed to describe the release of energy from a system. And as you look at what metabolism really is in the end, is basically sunshine that has been stored in the carbon battery in the form of glucose or fatty acids that's then released by the microbiome inside of our bodies, namely mitochondria, that then releases sunshine back into our cells and we run on sunlight. And so we are light beings, and your metabolism is your connection to the nature that would liberate that sunshine within you. And we now know that human cells can't do that. You have to have this complex ecosystem within you to connect to the sunlight in such a way that you become that light being and become this beacon that actually burns brighter than suns. And this is ultimately where metabolism comes in. It's the ability to liberate energy actually defines life itself. When I think about metabolism, as a medical student, I was basically told, well, if you're obese, you have a slow metabolism. If you're skinny, you have a fast metabolism. It's kind of basic. Now, as I take that step back over 25-year period, I start to realize actually metabolism is a measure of my capacity to compound physics. And so the difference between physics and biology is about a 10,000 time increase in light energy. And so the sun, cubic centimeter by cubic centimeter, is the most powerful thing in the universe in regards to physics. There's no physics reaction more potent than that nuclear fission fusion reaction of the surface of a star. They burn for millions of years, and they burn brighter billions of years. They burn for billions of years, and they cover hundreds and thousands of millions of light years. And Yeah, it's just like the scale of this physics is so mind-boggling. But it's recently been shown that 10,000 times that much light is produced by a cubic centimeter of mitochondria. So a cubic centimeter of mitochondria versus a cubic centimeter of the sun, 10,000-fold increase in light. So what is life? It's a 10,000 time improvement on physics in its capacity to consolidate light energy. And so that's what I've learned over the last 25 years, being with people and being with humans on their journey. And really what, taught me that in the ICUs in spades was death and watching people burn brighter towards the end of life in some bizarre way. And it often came through as these moments of near spiritual enlightenment where they would come back from coma states or unconscious states, and they'd suddenly come so present that it scares you as a being to be present with these individuals that suddenly are so present. They look at you as if they can see your ancient version of yourself or something, and they say something to you that just gives you goosebumps at the deepest level and makes you feel very insecure because what they just said doesn't fit with your worldview as a doctor or your worldview as a Christian or your worldview as a Muslim or your worldview as XYZ religious being. You realize there's something outside of biology and religion, physics, philosophy that this person is experiencing in that moment where they're letting go or exiting the biologic state and going back into their infinite nature and then coming back into this finite expression to say something. And so the more I was around that, the more I planted a seed in my head of like, this is what got me into medicine, because I was actually going into robotics and engineering originally, and I wasn't a very smart student. I was always like B plus, A minus student,
Thank
and
God.
and I didn't enjoy school at all. In high school, it was something I avoided at all costs, and I spent most of my time in garages building cars and stuff, and ultimately doing construction and building houses, and that mechanical world made a lot of sense to me. And I thought, well, I'm good with working with my hands. I'm good at this mechanical stuff. And then I decided to take a year off, got invited to the Philippines and saw a child born in my hands, and suddenly was like, wait, there's something here that I now can't unsee, and it's something miraculous that can't be measured by my tape measure, and I can't hammer a 2x4 into this one. Like, there's something here that is beyond the physical realm. And that dying event, 20 years later or 15 years later after that initial experience of childbirth, watching this rebirth process in ICUs and hospice patients rekindled that seed that had been planted that said, this is where it's at. This is the miracle. This is why I'm here for some reason. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. I don't know how I can be relevant to either birth or death, but I was drawn to it. And so my third subspecialty after endocrinology and metabolism was hospice and palliative care. And I was an associate medical director for a hospice for 4 years. And when you're admitting 80 patients a week to die, you end up seeing a lot of this transition zone. And you realize that our concept of death in the West is completely backwards. And our concept of death in the East, one of rebirth, is exactly accurate. And so we have this opportunity, I think, to realign ourselves as doctors and an entire medical system with the realization that there is no death. There's only birth and rebirth, and therefore we need to lose fear so that we live differently.
Oh, so powerful. You speak so beautifully. I'm sure that anyone listening who has had the utter privilege to be with someone as they launch, I like to call it, it does change you forever. It does change it is that ultimate paradigm shift, for many people, if they're able to be with someone who's not medicated into oblivion, where they can stay as present as possible in those last moments. It can be the ripple that continues into the living, that gets sort of put back into the compost of the universe. It's quite extraordinary. I love how you described it, and I'm sure that this is probably sending chills and ripples through a lot of people listening right now. So now I feel like there's this beautiful, gentle evolution of how this has moved through you to this. So I'm assuming you've got a lot of thoughts about your understanding of why our metabolic health is failing so much right now. I love that you brought in this conversation of light. But how specifically, if at all, do you see that there's a connection between the failing of our metabolic health with the failure we are giving, or I should say our failure to our soil, and then how that transfers into our failure to our soul?
Yeah, I love the question because it shows a ridiculous amount of confidence in my capacity to answer it. You talk about soil and how it connects to our soul. That's a fantastic question. Well, we're going to rally the audience here to speak through me here, but the soil is a description of a complex living ecosystem that seems to have a great sense of purpose around the phenomenon of biodiversity. And so diversification and adaptation seem to be the driving force of life within the universe, let alone on the planet. And interestingly, we if we want to get into physics at some point, we can talk about syntropy versus entropy. Entropy is chaos, syntropy is order out of chaos. And the microbiome is such an interesting example of this organization that comes through increasingly complex systems. And so it's not until you get a system of organisms that are speaking across species that you start to reach something that would approximate intelligence. And so at the very beginning of things on Earth 4 billion years ago, the first things were slime molds that aren't even cells. They're kind of a protoplasm of transfer of energy from sunlight into metabolism or energetic release. And then slowly we got after a billion years we reached bacteria. And the bacteria, as soon as they are achieved, are kind of the first demonstration of the ability to hold information within a genome, in this genetic sequence that's constantly respelling, redesigning itself. And every time it redesigns itself, it puts out new messages of opportunity for the environment to try something new. And so 3 billion years ago, we have all these bacteria that are exploding now over the whole planet in a million different variations because of their capacity for sharing new information, sharing new possibility of life. And so the soil, now on a planet a few billion years old, is expressing that iterative possibility of more life, more diversity. More diversity equals more nutrients, more life, more energy for adaptation, more energy for biodiversity. And it's this beautiful feedback loop. And so the soil is ultimately the source of life on this planet. And it is what breathes for the planet. It is what creates the water cycle on the planet. It's what creates the transfer of energy through nutrient transfer, nutrient densification, nutrient release. All of this stuff is all done by soil systems. Biology took a leap forward about a billion years later when we started getting multicellular organisms, and multicellular organisms allowed a single cell to start to differentiate into other possibilities. So now you didn't have to become different species, but within a single species, you could differentiate new possibility. And so you could become a liver or a kidney or a heart. And that was a new innovation that happened through an acceleration of sharing. And so up until that point, we only shared information through what was called horizontal gene transfer, which means you had to actually bump into your neighbor to say, hey, try this new possibility. And your neighbor would reach across the fence and be like, oh, that's cool. I wonder if I could make a bucket out of that or whatever. So it's that kind of barter system, sharing system of, I got this thing. I don't seem to need it. I can't figure out how to do it. You want to do it? And so it's that beautiful sharing economy for the first billion years of life on the planet. And then suddenly we got the ability as a cellular system to send out information at distance. And this is called viruses in traditional scientific talk today, but the word virus is loaded with a bunch of bad baggage and bad PR and everything else over the last few decades. And really a better description of it is used frequently in the medical literature, which is called an exosome. And an exosome is a description of a packet of information that's launched from the cell and can go great distances. These packets of information are not living beings. They're just new genetic possibility. So viruses are not there to attack you. They're not living organisms. They can't hurt you. Your body has to decide to take up every virus as a new possibility for life and decide whether you're going to use it or not. right now in my bloodstream, I have about 10 to the 15 different viruses coursing through my bloodstream as I sit here. I feel great. Why do I feel so good? Because there's so much potential for me to become something different tomorrow, because I have 10 to the 15, which is about 100 billion new genes in my bloodstream right now, 100 billion new opportunities. And the billion number is too hard to figure out. Like it's so extreme. Uh, you know, it's those crazy numbers. Like if I was going to give you, I think it's like $1 a second or one of these things, I would give you 1,000,000 in a week and a half. I would give you 1 billion in 32 years. And so you can't calculate the difference between 1,000,000 and 1 billion in your head. It sounds like just numbers, isn't that just 1,000 of those? Like it's such a vast number of viruses in my bloodstream right now. 100 billion new possibilities of genomic expression. We now know that over 55% of the genes that I inherited from my mom and dad were directly inserted into their genome by viruses. And so am I really from my mother and father, or am I actually the amalgamation of all of nature speaking through her genetic possibilities, from the microbiome of the soils to the microbiome of the air to the microbiome of the ocean? And that genetic pool is massive. And we now know that, while there might be 100 billion viruses in my bloodstream right now, in the air that I'm breathing, the air of the planet, there's 10 to 31 viruses. And so when the news comes out and says, hey, there's a new pandemic and there's a virus attacking, it's like, really? 1 in 10 to the 31 is attacking us? Like, what's the possibility of nature being that nice to us that 10 to the 31 minus 1 was safe, but you put 1 with 30 zeros after it, and now you're in the, quintuple quadrillions, all this ridiculous numbers. Like, you're out there so vast. You're now talking about like the number of stars in the entire universe, and you're telling me that we have one problem. It's not possible. This is a viral pandemic. Pandemic is a change in relationship to nature. That's it. And so if we have symptoms, it's a change in relationship to nature, and the adaptation that comes through fever and sickness is there to improve our genetic code. We do genetic updates all the time, and the process of updating your genome is fever, fatigue, because now you're making new proteins. You need a big download update. You do this with your cell phone all the time. Your cell phone finally says, you know what, you haven't turned me off in 17 weeks. You are on this thing 20 hours a day. You're running 72 different projects on me. I need a break. To please turn me off and turn me back on, and I'm going to update to a new operating system so that I can handle your insanity. Your body has to do that at some point. Your body's like, dude, need the new operating system. And so we're going to shut you down. You're going to have to lay down in bed. You're going to feel like crumb for a little bit, so you don't get up for a second, because I can't figure out any other way to get you to lay down flat. You're going to be so sick you can't even look at a screen. That's a relief. And then you're going to have this high fever that's going to kill all of the cancer cells in your body. You're welcome. And instead we like freak out and be like, now I'm sick and now I'm all depressed because I'm sick. Why am I sick? I should be healthy. No, you're updating your damn software system. So it's like, this is the reality of life, is there's never a bad moment in life. It's life. It's called life because it's constantly iterating and constantly moving towards more syntropy, which is a higher level of intelligence out of an increasing and complex system. So this is a little bit of the brushstrokes of where we need to go to shake off the fear and start to understand, when we say soil, we're talking about the potential of life.
We are so grateful for the support from the Hyperthermia Cancer Institute. At HCI, they understand the struggle and fear that comes with a cancer diagnosis, but they also believe in offering hope and cutting-edge therapy to their patients. Imagine a treatment that not only statistically increases the success rate of other cancer therapies, but also comes with virtually no side effects. Hyperthermia does just that. It's a beacon of hope for those navigating the arduous journey of cancer treatment. Studies have shown that hyperthermia stimulates the immune system, giving your body an additional ally in the fight against cancer, helping you to regain health, vitality, and peace of mind. Located in the heart of Los Angeles, the Hyperthermia Cancer Institute specializes in the administration of non-invasive, localized hyperthermia therapy using FDA-approved advanced ultrasound technology. This innovative treatment targets cancer cells with precision, delivering heat that enhances the effectiveness of both radiation therapy and chemotherapy. At the Hyperthermia Cancer Institute, you're not just a patient, you're a valued individual deserving the utmost advanced and compassionate care available. Join the many who have turned a fearful diagnosis into a story of survival and hope. Discover the difference that hyperthermia therapy can make in your cancer treatment journey. Visit the Hyperthermia Cancer Institute online at hcioncology.com, hcioncology.com, or call 888-580-5900 to schedule a consultation. This episode is brought to you by New Quadrant Foundation. When you're navigating the world of health and the world of finance, it's crucial to have trusted partners who understand the bigger picture. That's why I want to introduce you to one of our cherished sponsors, New Quadrant. Established in 2010 by one of our amazing Metabolic Terrain Institute of Health community members, Louise Stoughton, New Quadrant isn't just another financial entity. They're a leading fiduciary and family office service provider in the United Kingdom. With a heart for philanthropy and a unique focus on promoting wellness for professional women, and their mission is to guide their clients so they can turn aspirations into tangible charitable goals. But it doesn't end there. The New Quadrant Foundation, a beacon of philanthropic endeavors, was birthed from the very core values of New Quadrant. The foundation doesn't just house a part of the business profits, it radiates the essence of the entire team's charitable vision. As establishing UK-based charities evolved in complexity, New Quadrant Foundation serves as a guiding light for our supporters across the pond, directing funds to worthy causes and ensuring that your contribution can have the biggest impact possible. We at the Metabolic Terrain Institute of Health are humbled and deeply grateful to have been beneficiaries of the generosity from this UK-based charity for years. And for our United States listeners, if you've ever wondered about obtaining tax relief on your donations to a UK foundation, New Quadrant is your compass. With New Quadrant, your philanthropic journey is in caring, capable hands. To learn more, visit newquadrantpartners.com. That's newquadrantpartners.com. This episode is brought to you by Keto Mojo. If you're on a ketogenic or low carb, high fat diet, you will want to measure your ketones and blood sugar to ensure you're staying on track. And that's exactly where Keto Mojo glucose and ketone meter comes in. The Keto Mojo meter empowers you to take control of your health. It takes the guesswork out of being in ketosis. It provides fast and accurate readings, helping you to fine-tune and ensure you're getting the results you're aiming for. Ketosis aids in the treatment of cancer, diabetes, and other chronic metabolic diseases, while also providing the metabolic adaptability needed for a healthier life. When it comes to metabolic health, always test, assess, and address. Never guess, and ensure you're making the right choices for your health and well-being with the reliable Keto Mojo blood glucose and ketone meter. Keto Mojo is giving listeners a 15% discount on blood glucose and ketone meter kits using the code NASHA15. That's NASHA 15. Visit keto-mojo.com, keto-mojo.com, and take the first step toward taking control of your ketogenic diet and your health. Don't guess, test with the Keto Mojo meter.
All right, so that's half your question.
Hey, first of all, really well done. And before we go into the second part, I just think it's important to really illustrate that when we are given that opportunity to upgrade our system, most of us fail to take that challenge. Most of us suppress, ignore, override, etc. And so I just think that this, hearing this through you in this way, might land differently for people next time they reach out for that acetaminophen next time they have a little bit of a dull fever, and look at this more as an opportunity for an upgrade. So I just want to leave that before you move into the next phase of where the soil meets the soul.
I wish everybody could. Well, actually, it's really good that nobody can watch me in my usual process of getting sick, because it's probably not socially appropriate. But the reality is, it's a freaking celebration. And so when I start to get sick, I know that this is my next opportunity, and I know that my body has chosen this opportunity for me, because the decision to make a new protein, i.e., take in a new viral information thing and turn that into a protein and go through this upgrade, is the most regulated step that we've ever discovered in biology. It takes 200 different decisions at the microscopic level to go ahead and make that new protein. And so you've done 200 checks and balances to say, are you sure? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. But is it okay if I do? Yes. Do you really want this? Yes. 200 times you have to answer the question, am I going to make this? In every single cell, you have to decide that. And so this whole concept that the virus takes over a single cell and explodes it and proliferates itself, it is such an erroneous old story that's based on science of assumption and fear from 40 years ago, and has nothing to do with our current understanding of genomics or life. At any rate, when I start to get sick, I'm like, wow, my body is giving me the opportunity to shift something radical within me. I'm literally going to have a different body in 4 days than I've ever had before. And I'm actually going to have a different body than any human has ever had, because the way in which I'm going to express this new protein has never been done before, because I'm such a unique organism. And so that is pretty wonderful to realize, wow, this is going on that hike and suddenly finding that secret cave, and you opens with an abracadabra word that you just thought of, and then the cave opens and you can walk in and it's like a cathedral from Atlantis, something like that. That's your next virus. You are about to walk into a new possibility for reverence of life, for the expression of life. So that's step one, is get excited. Step two, respect how it feels and honor how it feels. You're fatigued. Thank goodness. Lay the hell down and turn off all the screens, turn off your email, turn off any expectations of yourself, because now you're, leaking water out your butt and you're vomiting in this direction. You're just like, yeah, this is hellish. The reality is that's your body going to whatever extreme it needs to get you to stop doing whatever you thought was important before, so that you could be the new human. And so honoring that of wow, do I really need this extreme of a message? And then when you start to lean into that and be like, okay, I'm willing to receive this and I'm willing to express it, you'll find out that the symptoms go 10 times faster. And so I typically will kind of have a febrile kind of sick event every 3 to 5 years, something like that. And so every 3 to 5 years, you kind of get that moment of oh my gosh, I think I'm actually getting sick. And then I go through my little ritual, excitement and new expression of self. And it's very unusual that it lasts more than 6 to 12 hours, because you're accepting each thing and giving it space to express itself. All right, I hear that. And what's coming up for me emotionally, physically, spiritually? What is the spiritual lesson trying to come through here? What is the energetic lesson coming through here? What is the emotional lesson coming through here? What is the ancestral message coming through here? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to release? What do I need to surrender? What do I need to accept? What am I willing to receive? You're going through all those layers as fast as you can, and you're in that kind of febrile between theta state. Fever takes you into theta wave meditation. And so if you're not good at meditating, just look forward to your next fever, and you're going to be in this creative mode. And in fact, my first big company that really launched, my biotech company with Ion that you mentioned earlier and all that, it wouldn't have gone off the ground if my chief science officer hadn't gotten a fever. I'd given him the paper that I had based the formulation of Ion on, and said, I need you to read this thing because it's going to change everything. I knew that because I was already using it myself, my patients, and I'd taken him to the old laboratory I had at academia, to get his opinion, second opinion, all this. And he had helped me with a bunch of my cancer research, and he just didn't have time to look at this paper until 4 months later, after me, please just read it now, no time. UVA's got me too busy. I'm studying all this disease stuff. He gets flu. And as the universe would have it, the only thing he could reach from his bed was the 90-page white paper on soil science that I had given him 6 months earlier. And he reaches over and grabs this thing. And in that theta wave state, he got the massive download on exactly what these molecules were doing at the cellular level, how they were interacting with herbicides and pesticides in the chemical food industry, how this thing was the antidote from the soil to human health and human life. Like, he got the whole download in a fever state, sicker than he'd been in 5 or 6 years. He calls me Monday morning, still kind of recovering in bed. And he's like, "You won't believe it." And he just starts monologue for 20 minutes. And I was like, "Dude, that's going to take us a year to even sort that out in the lab. If any, and it actually took it 3 years to really kind of prove everything he had seen in that fever state. And so just have great reverence for the way in which life will send you on exactly the right path to discover the deepest truths about who you are, what you're here to see and witness in nature. We are not discoverers. Like, nature knows itself too well to be discovered, but she wants to be witnessed. And so that fever that happens is your opportunity to slow down long enough to stop believing that you're creating the world around you and start to realize you're witnessing the world around you. And when you start to lean into the beauty of what you can witness, then nature does call you into that co-creative opportunity, and you get to start painting your own brush strokes into that beauty that you witness. And that's what the soil ultimately is, because within you is a complex soil system that is actually more diverse and more intelligent, therefore, than any other soil system. The human colon actually holds more biodiversity per cubic centimeter than any other ecosystem. So the anatomy of your body was fashioned to allow for the maximum number of species to speak through a single neurologic system. And that's what creates intelligence. And so you are intelligent for the complexity of life that you hold within the soil of your gut. And the best soil on earth is in a human colon. And so this is really what we're being called to do, is speak for nature, be the voice box for the complex ecosystems that have devised themselves out of the soil systems, out of the ecosystems, out of the micro and macro flora, fauna, everything else for 4 billion years. You now speak for the trees. You now speak for the soil. You are the Lorax. And so this is the journey, I think, really ultimately, is when we get to that humble state, we will realize the vaunted position that we hold in nature, that she has been holding us up to this moment. She has been holding us higher and higher and higher so that we would speak for all of her. And that's the gift of being human.
Gosh, that, my gosh, amazing. Just amazing. And one of your superpowers in hearing you speak in other places and having some one-on-one conversation with you is you have this ability to see, like you just walked us through the process of having a virus, having a cold, having a flu. You have this beautiful ability to see the gifts within what would be perceived as the poisons or the bad news or the messages. Like you rise to that over and over. For my experience, I always see cancer not as an enemy. I see it as a messenger. I see it as an opportunity. You speak so much. I know you see cancer very similarly in that place as well. And the way you just described the viral process, I would love to know how you have transformed or transmutated what glyphosate has come here to teach us.
Yeah, super interesting molecule. It's not a new concept to put salt on fields. The Romans started doing this in mass, and it was probably done by the Persians and some of the more ancient societies before the Roman Empire, but it was used to kill soil. And so we started salting fields way back as a method for taking down enemies. And so we would go and salt their fields to create sterility in their soil systems and kill their food system and cause starvation. The organophosphates is a family of salt molecules that were popularized in chemical warfare in the 20th century in something called Agent Orange. I'm many of you old enough will have remembered Agent Orange in the era of Vietnam and that 25-year war that we waged. I mean, I wish our current generations could remember how long we fought the Vietnam War, to absolute failure, to complete loss, to complete desolation of the not only the Vietnamese people, but the Cambodian people that we destroyed. And that's actually interestingly where my life began, was with the Hmong people. I grew up with the Hmong people that were refugees in Colorado. A large group of Hmong refugees from Cambodia were sent over. They were the indigenous peoples of the Cambodian forests and rainforests that were along the Ho Chi Minh Trail that we bombed out with Agent Orange. And so in a very strange and ironic way, I was raised in a large way by the people that this chemical had actually been designed to destroy. And then I find myself 50 years later talking about this molecule. So it's a weird way that life weaves itself together. And ironically, those Hmong people, well, this is kind of tripping me out right now. I actually put all these dots together before, but the Hmong people were the ones that taught my mother how to garden and taught her about soil. And so my earliest childhood memories are walking to the community garden outside of the Section 8 government housing that I lived in. I had two wonderful parents, but sworn hippies and Jesus freaks, which meant that money was the enemy, and you certainly couldn't get to heaven with money. So they were being very, very holy with the poverty that we were practicing, and in that we lived a very rich life because this community garden was right across the gutter, this little like drainage ditch that separated the low-income housing projects from the community garden that had been set up. And ironically, now you can't find a Section 8 housing that has a community garden with it, I don't think, in the country. So, but back in the day, we were allowed to have gardens, and it was a 10 by 10, 10 foot by 10 foot little tiny garden. And these Hmong women, each with their 10-foot plot, would squat in the middle of these gardens in their indigenous gowns that were, ground length black gowns that were embroidered to the hilt, and they looked like flowers of some exotic kind themselves. And they would squat in the middle of these gardens and talk across those strings, and there was this community that was speaking across boundaries. And as you start to look at glyphosate as a molecule that came out of the Agent Orange effort to destroy the Vietnam jungle, Agent Orange was known to be a carcinogen by the time that war was over. We had lots of soldiers that were developing all kinds of skin cancers and pulmonary respiratory problems and diseases and cancers and all this. So we knew it was carcinogen. And so that wasn't going to be working for some sort of non-warfare methodology, it didn't seem. So we came up with a slightly different salt. And so Monsanto, which had been the company that had developed Agent Orange, bought the patent for another organophosphate that would become the glyphosate molecule. And that glyphosate is the description of a phosphate salt that sterilizes and destroys the vitality of soil systems, which makes it a very potent weed killer. And as I'm sitting here thinking about those Hmong people, I'm kind of tripping out, because just as each woman sits within her cell as kind of the metabolic center of that garden, and her efforts were creating biodiversity, and each one had 30 or 40 food species in that little 10-foot garden, and she had the boundary of the cell wall, her little string around her thing, and she was speaking across the boundaries to the people around her. And in that, there was this incredible culture that was able to be transplanted from South Asia all the way to Boulder, Colorado, because there was communication across well-held boundaries that fostered biodiversity. Glyphosate, Agent Orange, or glyphosate come along, and what that chemical does is destroy the boundaries. And it also destroys the biodiversity within the garden, the soil system, and in so doing, it causes a failure of communication. And so the opposite of what was happening in that community garden is what organophosphates do. It destroys each of the layers that would lead to a complex society, culture, thriving system of humanity. Glyphosate, our laboratory has shown over the years, starts by breaking down the boundaries of the gut cells. And when those fall apart, you get leaky gut, of course, but you also get immediate chronic inflammation. And so you get this chronic inflammatory game started at the gut lining, which is where 80% of your immune system lies. And so your immune system now is fighting everything, and everything is reactive. And that constant reaction to overwhelm that is now being experienced through that leaky gut now manifests throughout the whole organism, and you get overwhelmed with the mental health, collapse. You get overwhelmed with the immune system, and you're prone to disease. You're overwhelmed with the cardiovascular system. You got heart disease and blood pressure and all the things. Overwhelm of the caloric failure to get metabolized into energy, so it all backs up into obesity. And so obesity happens due to a failure of the soil. The soil is where all the energy is mobilized, the mitochondria inside your body, which are the tiny little bacteria living inside your cells. When those mitochondria fail from the chemical pressure, which is the second thing that the glyphosate molecule does, breaks down boundaries, then destroys bacteria and mitochondria. And so you no longer have the workforce to deliver the nutrients, the bacteria, and you no longer have the ability to mobilize the nutrients, the mitochondria. And so with that two-step mitochondria or microbiome kind of desolation that's caused by this cellular destruction of you develop the global chronic disease epidemic. And so we added this chemical in 1976. And by 1981, we had a global obesity problem that was most evident in the U.S. and that kind of spread globally as we spread farming practices. By the early 1990s, we had an immune system dysfunction, gluten sensitivity, celiac disease, chronic pain syndromes, chronic fatigue syndromes, fibromyalgia. By 2001, we had an epidemic of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's emerging in men and women. We had autism and attention deficit emerging in children. By 2011, we had a cancer epidemic that could have never been dreamed up. Today, in 2023, we're facing everything going through the roof in regards to this chronic disease epidemic. And we're losing relationship ultimately to the viruses. And we lose relationship to the genetic potential of the life. That means we have failed to make ourselves part of the future of life. When you see a pandemic, that is humanity stepping out of relationship to the future of this planet. And so if we can't handle the genetic updates of the future, we are ruling ourselves out as a future participant in there. So this is what extinction starts to look like. And now in 2023, you can start to see what that really, what drives the mechanism of extinction is infertility. And 1 in 3 males is now infertile by sperm counts in all Western countries. And now in Eastern countries, India is now fast on the heels of the West. 1 in 4 women in the West has polycystic ovarian syndrome, and then a whole myriad of infertility causes beyond that. 1 in 4 women with just polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so you get this cascade of dysfunction in the fertility thing, and that as we hit 2050, we'll predict that it's going to be a rare thing that anybody has natural birth anymore. It's all going to be in vitro fertilization. And that's what extinction starts to look like, is less and less likelihood of being able to survive that journey of disease as it continues to manifest. So that's what glyphosate does. And you asked me to tell you what was good about that. And so I can tell you
like wah wah wah. Yeah.
Good thing is that it did exactly what I just told you, is it broke down all the boundaries, it destroyed the soil systems, and it changed our relationship to nature itself. And if you look back at our 300,000 year brief history of humankind, we are a blip on the radar in life on Earth. We have needed a complete reset so badly because somewhere along our development of intelligence, we developed the fear and guilt and shame that we were separate from nature. And we developed stories of mythic stories, religious stories, all kinds of stories about our separation and divorce from the garden. We got kicked out of the garden. And when we got kicked out of the garden, we had to develop an egoic shield to protect us. Shame was the first symptom of being kicked out of nature. And so we felt this shame towards it. And then as we started to see it as our adversary, we began to feel guilty as the cancer on the planet that was extracting and destroying her ahead of us. And for that, we started to see our own fragility, and we developed fear that maybe we aren't as strong as we thought we are. Maybe nature is stronger than us. And so we have this fear, guilt, shame paradigm that's unfolded. And it takes us right back to the very origin of our human history. And no matter what people group or religion you come through, we have this story. And so we have to take ourselves back down to literally ground zero to begin the new journey into the new origin of humanity. And so this is our hospice moment. And we get to rebirth now. And so the rebirth process is going to begin, or has begun already, but will become evident in these couple of months and years ahead. And I really, really believe that by the end of this decade, we will not recognize the humanity that we are expressing, because in the next short 3 to 5 years, you will not believe how our philosophy changes, how our belief of who we are, what we're here to do, and how many species are participating, not just on the planet and our soils, but galactically, intergalactically. Like, this is the time for community at a very, very, very large scale and a very, very, very small scale. And so from the micro to the macro, we are going to discover that we are not only the voice of nature, we are ultimately the heart of our universe. And it is our capacity, the beauty uniquely for our belief of separation from nature, that allows us to step aside. It's like that Archimedes quote, if you give me a platform, I'll move the earth with a lever. And so the platform we've been given that separates us from the earth so that we could see her beauty is the 5 senses and ultimately the ego. And the thing that now brings us to our knees of that egoic journey of believing we were better is glyphosate and every other one of the 200 chemicals you consume in your daily interaction with your beauty supplies, your food and beverage systems. Your environment is poisoning you to the point of complete collapse so that you will humble yourself for that nature to become the new version of intelligence on the planet. And that might be in human form, or maybe we go through our hospice journey, release, and then enter into a much more intelligent planet through something else that's not human. I don't know. But either way, it gets more beautiful. Either way, it gets more intelligent. And every extinction has always led to an explosion of opportunity for the planet, and the intelligence and the biodiversity and ultimately the beauty that is expressed in the next iteration after extinction is so beyond imagination. From the last one, we went from dinosaurs, deciduous tree, and dinosaurs to birds and to mammals. We went from ferns and palms to deciduous trees, wildflowers, and the like. So the beauty just exploded on this planet. The intelligence exploded. And so I get excited about what's the difference between a triceratops and me. So what is the difference between me and the next thing that comes? Like, I thought triceratops was awesome. And maybe something comes along someday and is looking at my skeleton being like, whoa, that thing must have been so cool. Not realizing how lucky they are to be them. And so we are an iterative process of life, and we are ancient souls that play that game over and over and over again. And it's been an honor to be chosen to be alive right now. Each of you have been chosen to be here right now. And I don't know what select process that is, but certainly there is a lot of energy in this universe that comes in organized formats that we might call an energy force or a gravitational field or a soul, whatever you want to call it. But there are so many quadrillions and quadrillions of these energy centers through the universe, and only 8 billion of them, just a handful, showed up here on this little blue speck out in some far-flung suburb of the universe to experience the capacity to love, to experience the capacity to have the vibration of that happens when you see the beauty of the universe. And it took a pretty amazing biologic experiment to form that intelligence, to form that capacity. And so I just honor each of you for being such a select few, for being such a select and high vibrating group that you would be chosen to go through this metamorphosis right now. And without the human journey, we would not have the opportunity to be here right now in the transformative, meditative, and transmutational process that we're in. So it's an honor to be here with each of you. We have long been waiting for this moment, and glyphosate and the rest have set the stage perfectly for us to do something more intelligent and beautiful.
My gosh. Oh, woo. Wow. And wow. You spoke to this wove this throughout our conversation today, which was very much about this need to degenerate before you regenerate. And we're in that phase. You talked about this being our hospice on the planet. And you also talked about the message of hope coming with this beautiful acceleration of sharing. And hearing that gives me chills because I keep meeting people like you and all of the things that you and Seraphic Group and, your biome project and a lot of your other amazing projects you have going on right now. I just want to give you one moment to maybe speak to what one thing you do each day, or maybe one thing you would offer up to us each day that allows us or gives us an opportunity to do better?
I mean, the one thing that we must do as a human species, and the one thing that we must do as an individual to participate in the future of the planet, is to let go of judgment. It's the entire secret to life. And if you can let go of judgment, you will become so full of joy. You will recognize beauty everywhere, and you will stop the separation, othering, the us and them, the judgmental, polarization that is driving us to fail in our capacity to be a single species. We have, as a species, created so many divisive differences between one another with these frail five senses that we have forgotten that we have at least seven other senses that tell us that everything is okay. Everything is one. Everything is connected. Everything is perfect. Everything is beautiful. Those are the seven senses you need to start to pay attention to, and start here and go down through your body. And so this capacity to tune into your seven energy centers, your seven senses, that, I tend to buzz up top and right in my neck. That's when I know I'm coming into alignment with new information. And sometimes this happens when I'm in breath work, or when I'm seeing a patient, or when I'm, out in nature on a hike, or see a lightning storm, or, witness something spectacular in the face of a loved one. Those moments are when I start to feel these other centers. And it's sad that we think of them as unusual events, because that should be where we live from. Those seven centers of energy, those seven centers of awareness that have absolutely nothing to do with what it looks like, or what it smells like, or what it tastes like, or what it feels like. It is not one of your five senses that you actually well from. You are being distracted by your five senses that then give you the belief that you are separate from everything, that then puts you into a judgmental state towards everything around you, to try to reassure an egoic mind that you are the best, you are the safe, you are the one, you deserve everything, you blah, 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 blah. The surrender of judgment is a journey into surrendering the five senses to pay attention to the real you, and to start to act from that space will allow you to do things you never thought possible, to attract to you resources, being people, opportunities, finances, whatever the heck is needed for you to do your highest purpose will be attracted to you, because you're now living present, which makes you a generative engine of gravity. Ultimately, you can bend space-time with your presence, because you are 10,000 times brighter than a sun. And so this is your galactic capacity to change space-time, to bend the fabric of the universe to your will, to your imagination, to your creativity, when you become present to those other seven senses. And you can't do that unless you have surrendered judgment. That is the result of your dependence, and ultimately codependence, and toxic relationship that you have with your five senses.
Now, I would love to introduce you to one of our sponsors, Hyperbaric Medical Solutions. They are the leading provider of hyperbaric oxygen therapy in the United States, dedicated to helping patients achieve optimal health by bringing the revolutionary healing powers of HBOT. At the helm is Dr. Alan Katz, a distinguished professional with double board certifications in emergency and hyperbaric medicine. With over 3 decades in both fields, his leadership ensures that patients receive nothing short of excellence. Hyperbaric Medical Solutions specializes in the delivery of hyperbaric oxygen therapy, integrating other regenerative medicine and innovative services to fulfill its mission to enhance patients' quality of life and well-being through personalized care plans. Do you want to see if hyperbaric oxygen therapy is right for you? Take advantage of a free 15-minute information session with one of their experienced clinicians. Visit hmshbot.com. And now I want to introduce you to another one of our amazing sponsors, Hack Your Health by KetoCon, which is a conference that focuses on improving metabolic health through nutrition and lifestyle. The event features industry experts who share research and insights on a variety of topics, including low carb, ketogenic, and zero carb diets, along with stress reduction, sleep optimization, gut health, emotional health, and so much more. It is an immersive experience that includes keynote speakers, specialty panels, breakout sessions, and interactive activities like the red light therapies, cold plunge, natural movement classes, and sauna. And it is a transformative event that leaves attendees feeling inspired and motivated. Hack Your Health will take place May 31st through June 2nd, 2024 in Austin, Texas. And as a special treat for our listeners, they have given us a discount code that will give you $50 off of a 3-day general attendee or a 3-day VIP or a Sunday-only Expo Hall Pass. Just go to www.hackyourhealth.com and enter the discount code Metabolic. That's METABOLIC. The code is active now and will remain active until May 1st, 2024. But don't delay. They always sell out, and you won't want to miss Hack Your Health by KetoCon. Visit hackyourhealth.com today.
Do you have any background medical training? Are you a nurse? Are you a physical therapist? Do you have a degree in clinical nutrition? Have you yourself been a patient dealing with cancer, but have a really good grasp of the sciences, maybe worked in some adjunct scientific community or have some type of a medical certification of some sort, but you're not quite at the level of a clinician where you're able to order labs and imaging and prescribe pharmaceuticals and diagnose and treat disease? If you fit in that first category, you are the perfect candidate to join our Train Advocacy program. We'd love to have you. You would be a great voice to add to our community and a great resource to so many patients looking to get more connection to their physicians in applying the metabolic approach to cancer.
To learn more, visit terrain.network/tap. That's terrain.network/TAP.
Wow, Dr. Zach, as always, incredibly illuminating and incredibly powerful that you were so willing to share your light, to shine your light on all of us today. And I can't wait to see what we get to co-create together in the future.
Honored to be a part of your team and honored to be part of this community that you have brought together. Thank you, Nasha, for the time.
Absolutely. Blessings.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Metabolic Matters. We hope you found today's conversation insightful and empowering. As we wrap up today's episode, we want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible team and supporters who make this podcast possible. First, we'd like to thank our production team, Alex Sanchez, Cindy Kennedy, Jessica Gilman, and Lynn Hughes, for their hard work behind the scenes. Our theme song was written by Julie Newmark and performed by Whiskey Flower. And finally, we want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in and being a part of the Metabolic Matters community. Do you want to learn more? Please visit our website, metabolicmatters.org, and you can follow us on Instagram. If you liked this episode, please leave us a review and share it with your friends and family. And if you want to help support our mission, spreading awareness and knowledge about metabolic health, reach out. We'd love you to join with us. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on upcoming episodes. We have so much exciting content coming your way. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember, your metabolic health matters.